Hey folks, yo! Let's cut over here. Let's see if we're live. Are we live? We sure are live, folks. How's it going, everyone? Wow. Here. There it is.
Are we live right now?
We are live right now. And we've got a couple things going on here. We've got me and Dak. Dak's chilling down here in the corner. He's just right here.
What's up, guys? I'm in the corner. Look at me.
We should have put you on a green screen, then you're just like sitting on the keyboard, just
floating in space.
Folks, let us know if you can hear Dak well enough. This is our first time doing something like this where actually say something, Dak.
Testing. All right, so
right on. It's looking good on my end here.
Is that good?
It's looking good. I think we can hear him. Dak, give us some vocals. Squirkle.
Hello, how's it going?
Wunderbar. All right. So what's going on today is Fangamer was asking if I could do another artist stream. And so today I wanted to basically do a stream of just talking about video game music, kind of a continuation of the last stream that I had done. And I was kind of getting into more technical things during the last stream, and we can do that again this time. But yes, DakVac is in the chat there. But what I wanted to do is just kind of feel out this stream with what the audience is interested in going into. I know that we have a wide variety of folks that are some who are musicians, some who are not musicians, some who aren't interested in being musicians, but they just like video game music. So we can really go in a lot of different directions with this. And I was asking Dak, do you want to introduce yourself? Who are you?
Yeah, okay.
You're kind of a big deal around this video game music scene.
I'm small. Look at the window space I have.
While you talk, I'm going to try to adjust it.
So I'm Dak. I am the communications director at MAG, which is a music and gaming festival organization. Events throughout the year. Our biggest one is Anywhere, which is usually about like 25,000 people, and we end up having a bunch of really awesome guests, like the very famous Robbie Benson and Super Soul Bros come play. And it's really the celebration love of. So, oh look, hey, I'm on the screen now. I can see.
Yeah, I got a big one for you there.
Oh, that's great. Big screen. Look at me. I've taken over the stream. But yeah, so that's basically MagFest in a nutshell. Is there anybody in the chat who has ever heard of or maybe even been to MagFest before? That would be cool.
We definitely have. I'm going to try switching this up. MagFest is, as Dak was saying, it's just a huge event. It's constantly growing, and it's been going on for quite a while, and was kind of like a big part of Super Soul Bros' growth. Like once we played for MagFest, suddenly we had a lot more of a following. Sorry, I'm like adjusting while talking here. There we go. It really was a huge launching point for us with the band, and so Dak is not only works for MagFest, but he's also, like a lot of people that work for MagFest or do the MagFest thing, they're also in some way like musicians. They're into the video game music, and so Dak's he stayed over at our place a few times, and we've had our late night piano lessons and met many other things. So I wanted to try to maybe organize the stream a little bit more this time, where we've got someone I can kind of bounce off of and who might be able to kind of curate some of the questions that you all have in the chat. We're attempting to reconnect. Hopefully it's coming through. It says live. There we go. We're back. We're back for now. Yeah, I was hearing that a lot of other Twitch streamers have been having issues, so it might be some bottleneck on the Twitch servers. So just bear with us. We'll do our best, but it might be an off day with the Twitch servers. All right, so if it's working, Here, say something there, Dak. I wanted to just check on the
testing.
echo
How we
here.
doing? Woo! We there? We have in chat right now. Give some shout outs. Say
Perfect.
hello. You're in chat.
Shout-outs. Yeah, there is a little bit of an echo, but I think we're okay. I can turn down my I'm going to turn one thing down really quick and then we'll be set.
Ooh, we sound much better. All right, so we have Dead. Yeah. I love that.
All right.
Metal mail. It's all here.
You got a bunch. Do you have some mag critters here?
I think we might have the old Kevin Lynn. Kevin, shout out. Got Spice Show.
So, one thing I was thinking of kind of going over is there's an interesting thing with music. A lot of things that, a lot of video game music and even non-video game music, the thing that you hum or the thing that you would hum to or that you would sing, that's your melody. And the melody is the key thing that makes any song what it is. That's the tune of the song. And so when it comes to doing video game music arrangement or rearrangement, you want to keep that melody somewhat intact. And as long as that's there, then everything else is essentially up for grabs. You can totally mess with whatever else is going on. Yeah.
You were trying to take a video game melody, but kind of turn it into something more unique people don't expect. What would you call them? Where would you?
So I think that I try to keep melodies generally close. Like if I were to be doing, if I did Green Hill Zone or something.
Right.
That's the way it normally goes. I think.
Okay.
One example is you could swing the eighths, make it more of a swung feel. So instead of it having this driving you could have a more that's the swung eighth kind of feel, and then that suddenly changes without really changing the rhythm of the notes. You're just you're elongating those first beats there. So on the left,
kind of walking back.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I didn't realize that in the Sonic tune, or rather in Sonic the movie, there's like that little segment where they have like a little piano backing track where it's Green Hill Zone, but it's played in a much more laid back and kind of swung kind of thing, like. And that's just a very effective way to reference the melody. Two things are happening there. It's slowed down, and it's also swung. But then usually that kind of a slower swung feel, you encounter that in a swing tune, like a jazz tune. And usually there's a walking bass line in that kind of slower tempo jazz. So you would have a walking bass that's... I was just walking along the bass notes, the bass notes. I'm walking along the chord tones of whatever is happening in the song. So during that part of the song, so while that melody is happening, during that, we have all this other stuff happening below, which is these chords, these harmonies. So we've got F major and then E minor. And it's just switching back and forth between those chords. So instead of just playing those chords like that, bassists, when they're walking a bass line, they're usually walking along the chord tones, along those notes that are in that chord. So essentially doing this. This is our F chord, but we're just walking. And then the E chord. F chord, E chord. So
and that already a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just it's adding a little bit there. Sometimes the on I think Discord's kind of acting funky right now, but if the audio is cutting out, try Dak, can you try talking like right up on the mic, and then that way if there is any sound cancellation happening, then but it might be a Discord connection there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, here, this is probably a lot louder now, so
it's good. It's better? Perfect. It's okay. Perfect.
I'll make sure that I'm doing this. I'm really hugging the mic.
That's right. But yeah. So like adding a bass line. Hey, Spicy Nacho just learned something. Adding a bass line can be as simple as just walking the chord tones of whatever chord is happening underneath the melody. Metal Meister. Actually, oh yeah, did you have what were you thinking?
Well, so if you were, so right now you're kind of doing this 1-3-5, this triad form, which Metal Maestro pointed out, or Metal Melee Master, there it is. If you were going to try and make that a little bit more interesting, because you are kind of the king of the left-hand bass, what would you do to sort of add maybe a little bit of funk or a little spice to that?
Sure. Let's see. I usually one second, I'm going to put this water down here. Usually little ghost notes, little just little ghost notes. These are things that aren't really a note, but they're just something, a very quick little grace note. It's a little blup, a little rhythmic percussive thing that you can feel, but you can't really hear what the tone is or what the note is. So with these notes, we can hear so like adding a little so I think early on I built a habit of flicking my thumb, and this is something that comes from playing on an organ a lot, because you usually are walking a bass line on when you're playing on the organ. Just getting into a habit of flicking your thumb just before you start on the root note of the chord. And also, folks, feel free to mention in the chat if we're saying stuff that's maybe a little bit over your head, or if you want us to go into a little more detail of what we're talking about. But adding a little ghost note just before landing on the root of the chord. Let me bring this down here so it's a little more bassy. So, like, you can't even hear what that note is necessarily, but you feel there's something happening there. Bo, bo, bum, bo, da, dum, da, da. That's something that bassists do a lot. When people are playing bass, I've heard a lot of bassists say that it's like drumming on notes, basically. It's like you're, right. And I don't play bass guitar, but I know I understand what they're saying. Like if you're plucking strings or slapping strings, it really is just playing rhythms. And if you're playing on a hand drum or something, or anything, you might add little ghost notes, little extra spicy extra notes with your thumb or some other thing. And so approaching bass more rhythmically rather than what are the notes themselves, that's kind of my approach. I do hit other notes aside from the 1, 3, and the 5. I think that's what Melee was asking about too. Mm-hmm. Which is true. Like I could adjust. Let's see here.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes, the 4 might be a little jarring.
Right.
The 4 sometimes clashes with other notes in the scale, so oftentimes that'll be avoided. But the 2, that's always fair game. The 6 is pretty sweet.
I was reading about how...
And the 7 is pretty sweet, too.
I was reading how, like, early beboppers, instead of using the 4, would use a sharp 4 or a flat 5, or really what it is a sharp 11 if they were going to kind of add some flavors to some... well, I don't want to get too technical here, but like major chords and stuff.
Right, very true. Oftentimes, like playing the actual 4.
Brozard says an augmented 4th works well. Yep.
Yep. Brozard.
That's a great name, by the way.
Absolutely, though. So, like, oftentimes, like, if you're walking bass, I mean, doing a sharp 4 or a sharp 11, I think that makes more sense harmonically if you're playing those notes in a chord.
Ooh, okay, yeah. Oh yeah, that's adding a little bit of spice there.
Yeah. But if anyone's interested in starting to play left-hand bass lines, I think getting used to just playing the root note right on that downbeat. So whenever a new chord change happens in a song, you want to make sure you're landing on that root note right there on the downbeat, the first beat. And then from there you can go wherever you want. But really the 5 and the root, those are... You could get by so long with just those 2 notes there. For instance, a lot of the bass lines that I play, I'm just doing... So I'm doing... If I'm vamping on a C chord... Here's our root. This is the 5. We call this the 5 because it's the 5th note in the scale of C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the octave. So you can, just by having your fingers on those 3 little positions, then you're not having to think so much about what notes you're playing, but you can think more rhythmically and try different rhythmic ideas with those 3 appendages, basically. Like, if I play the Smash Bros. Theme, or the character select.
Yeah.
It's a particular rhythm. Boom. So that rhythm is what really gives it that feel, but the notes aren't that complicated. Let's see, if I were to be doing... So I'm playing a lot of different rhythms. Now, we could always add other notes, but I think starting off simple and kind of try to just get comfortable and explore the rhythmic options with just a couple of notes. I think that's a good starting point with doing bass lines.
Cool.
And of course, that was me just vamping on one chord, which was the C chord. You could always, if you did, we could always do a tune that's a little more, it's got some variety. We can go back to Green Hill Zone.
Going along with that,
yeah.
Plasma Fire 3000, aka our buddy Kev.
Kev,
can you talk a little bit about syncopation from pop or funk music and its influence on VGM, and maybe its influence on your VGM?
Yeah. I think that video game music, especially game music that was composed in Japan, there's such a huge musical appreciation in Japan. I think I read or heard somewhere that that's the largest music market, or in the sense that like more music is consumed in Japan than anywhere else on the planet, and so all kinds of music is being is influencing Japanese composers, especially. But I think just in the timeline of when a lot of classic video game music was composed, like in the 80s and the early 90s, during that time you had a lot of jazz fusion. Like if you think about the composers doing stuff in the 80s, what were they listening to when they were growing up in the last couple decades? You have like this whole electric jazz era of the 60s and the 70s, and then funk and all of these other things that were fusing together to make the sounds of what was the 70s and the late 70s. It would be silly, or it would be hard to imagine that a composer in Japan in 85 hadn't heard some jazz fusion from the late 70s or early 80s, and it really was a very popular kind of sound back then. Still is. It's still celebrated. I always say that like jazz music or jazz fusion and funk and pop music with that funk element, it always seems as though it was more appreciated either 30 years ago or in some other country other than the States where we are.
Right. I think there was like Koji Kondo's one of his biggest influences ended up being a bunch of funk early on, and I was trying to look it up. There's the underground theme I think is by like it was basically a ripoff of I think T Square. Somebody should look that up in the chat.
It was it's by Fringe. It's a group called Friendship, and the tune is called Let's Not Talk About It.
Oh, that's right.
And it's originally it's pretty verbatim. It's got the same chord progression. It switches from C to F. It's got the same bass line, and it's got the original 6/8 time signature or right. 3. You know, or it's like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a tune that I've really wanted to actually work out with the band. It's got a bunch of great session players that my dad like grew up listening to. It's got
really?
Lee Reitenauer and a lot of these these funk players that my dad would play the records for. He would play all their records when I was growing up, and it's cool to know that stuff likely influenced a lot of the video game music that now I'm playing covers of in the style of the music that influenced
it's all looping back to the They influenced the VGM. You were influenced by them, and now you're turning the VGM back into the funk style that they originally. Yeah, that's great.
I love it. I love it. I love it most. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the guy creates asks a question. Says, "What's a good way to improve your technique on keyboard?"
I might not be the best person to answer that because I don't think I have very good technique. Maybe you could elaborate on that question. Do you? What kind of technique do you mean? Well, when I think of technique, I'm thinking of like how I'm actually playing. Fingering technique, I kind of just try. I know what note I'm trying to get to, and sometimes I get the right finger there, sometimes I don't. I know that there's a lot of finger technique that you can work out to be more efficient with how you finger certain phrases and make sure you can play them fluently. But when I'm improvising, half the time I don't know what I'm going to play until that instant. And sometimes I get the right finger there. Other times I don't have a finger to get there.
So what do you do? What do you do when you run out of fingers?
Oh man, I just move on. It's like, in other words, I botch it, and then you just got to get used to being okay with that and not letting it slip you up. That's really it. I play so many sour notes when I'm streaming, but I just try to you continue with it.
We got some good questions here. Okay,
sure.
The guy reiterates, or rather clarifies. He's thinking more along the lines of playing those sick bass lines that you have. And I got to tell you, Robbie, I've known you for, 3 years now, and that is the burning question that I have, which is, how does Robbie Benson put together these sick bass lines? I know that Nick Marinelli likes to make the joke that the best West Coast bassist is Robbie Benson's left hand, and I totally agree with that. So what's your process? I remember one time you told me that, and I don't know how true this was, or if you were maybe just trying to make me feel good. You told me you really only have like a couple different bassline figures that you play, and you sort of just maybe intertwine them or do something like that. Can you kind of take us through that process?
Yeah, it's very true. I haven't quite quantified them, but the one I was just showing you is actually, that's a pretty big bread and butter bass line for me.
Just 1-5-1.
1-5-1, but in that particular rhythm of so if we're playing to a metronome, right. So in relation to this being our tempo, actually I'll slow it down a little bit.
Okay.
So that would be 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E. So it's on the 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. So that bass line,
I heard you just do something there.
I did some extra stuff, right?
You did one of these where you went like, and then you went
right. You're totally right. So sometimes, this is a bread and butter bass line. It's like one of my main grooves that I'll do. But then when you get so comfortable with playing just that, then you can start to add little things here and there. So little fills. You can embellish it here and there so that there's some variety and you're not just playing the same exact thing every time. But the foundation of it is the same. So yeah, what I just did there was a chromatic meaning moving in half steps. If anyone is on a piano, a half step is moving down or up to the next touching key. So that's a chromatic movement. And so when you're playing a bass line, you're responsible for hitting the roots of whatever the chords are. And so when I'm playing this groove, right when I play that C there, that's the downbeat of the C chord. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So when I land on this, I want to make sure I'm landing on that on the 1. And so now I have a destination. I have to be here at this specific time. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. So if I know I have to be here on the 1, then all the time leading up to it, I can do whatever I want. And I in that case, I did a chromatic descension. I was descending down to the C there. So I was playing.
And so the most important thing, would you say, is making sure that you're landing on that note on the
yes.
1?
Yes.
That tonic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. The whatever the root is of the chord, you want to make sure that you're landing on that whenever the chord is supposed to occur. So it doesn't have to be on the downbeat of the measure. If the chord happens somewhere else in the measure, whenever that chord is happening, whenever that chord change starts, that's when you want to hit the root note of it.
Tofi asks, so you're always putting the root in the bass? You don't tend to do inversions? Question.
I typically don't. Sometimes a song is written in a particular way where the bass does play a non-root note at the beginning. For instance, we were teasing this song on the Super Soul Bros stream earlier, where I was playing. Let's see. So that tune is at one point. We have a slash chord where I play a C chord, but I'm playing an E on the bass, which is not the root of a C chord. That's the third of a C chord. And so that's what we would call a slash chord, where it's a C, but with a slash and an E underneath it. And that just particularly, it has its own sound. It doesn't sound quite as rooted. It doesn't sound quite as, to my ears, it doesn't sound quite as stable or grounded. It still sounds like a C major kind of sound, but if I play C on the bass, then it's a lot clearer. So when I land on that root note, I just try to land on that on the first beat of whenever the chord is supposed to happen. As long as I can land there, now we have a foundation, and my ear can really tell, okay, this is a C chord. And then during the rest of the duration of that chord, we could hit any other notes within that chord, or even outside of the chord. But the important thing is to get that root note at the very beginning. But there are some exceptions where in a song, compositionally, it's supposed to sound this way. And sometimes that, when we're playing a C chord with an E on the bottom, that's usually to do some sort of linear movement where we have like, right? So we're playing like a D minor chord, and then we're going to play a C chord over an E, and then we're going to play an F chord. And the reason we played an E down here when we were playing the C chord up here is because you get this nice linear movement of dun, dun, dun. So our ears really like logical movement, or we like to hear things that move in half steps chromatics. We also like to hear things that just have some linearity to them. So in this case, it's logically walking up the scale.
It's like you're taking us on a journey.
Exactly, on a journey. A journey.
So,
they were mentioning another echo. Let me know if it's getting better or worse.
Well, cool. So, I mean, that definitely answers a lot of the sort of baseline questions. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely go more into that at some point. Or
question, if you want to tackle a brand new subject.
Sure.
We've got from Soft Guitar. How do you end an improvisation?
How do you end an improvisation? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Do you mean like when you're improvising, when do you stop improvising?
I think it's also like how, like, you know, you can kind of sit there and like do some like really crazy stuff, but there is a definite finality to a lot of really good improvisations that I've heard, a lot of good solos. They kind of have something in common where, you know, you have some tension that has been released and you as the listener feel satisfied. So how would you do that after you've produced a big solo phrase?
Sure. Well, the first thing is knowing what your a big thing that can help is knowing what's how long are you soloing for. So if you're playing in a group like in Super Soul Bros, we have sometimes we'll have very clearly charted out lengths for solos. So we know that we're going to have a sax solo for 16 bars and then a trumpet solo for 16 bars. So knowing how long you have that's a good starting point to help you build that arc and build that journey. And it really is oftentimes it is an arc that's similar to a lot of storytelling. It's like start off simply. I'm doing it backwards. Start off, minimal. It also depends on the context of the song. Like, but
let's say you were doing something with like the Sonic the Hedgehog, Green Hill Zone. You know, 'cause that's pretty simple, and a lot of people know that.
If we were to do Sonic the Hedgehog, like if we're doing Green Hill. Let's say maybe I would do. Usually when we play on that, we do two choruses of the tune. That's like the length of a solo. So let's say we're going through the whole. Basically, think of the whole melody, the looping point of the song. That's one chorus. And so if I were to be playing for two choruses, then the first chorus I wouldn't try to do a bunch of crazy stuff there and then do not a bunch of crazy stuff on the second one. I would try to build it. I don't know. I usually, let's see. If we were to play a little bit here.
Yeah, hit us with a little solo.
So let's see. We would come into the solo like this. We're coming to the top here. Here's the solo. Oh, I got a key that's failing me here. So like that was me kind of really botching it. I'm trying to avoid this one key that's intermittent right now, but if
it was interesting. I noticed you doing something when you started off. When you were kind of like slow and building this momentum, you had this phrase that you kind of latched onto a little bit, which was this. And you kind of had like. And then you kind of kept doing that, and you inserted that later on whenever you were playing a lot of chords in a row and kind of doing that sort of like, whatever it was.
Yeah,
you still sort of snuck in this like motif that you had established early on in the solo, and that really melded and made that sound very cohesive.
Exactly, cohesive. That's, I think, good word, Dak. How do you spell that? Q-U-E... Cohesive. That's essentially that's actually kind of the dirty secret is that's just a lick that I like to use. So I can't really help but play it in a lot of things. But that's part of it too, is like when you improvise, you're talking, you're live composing on the spot, and it's just like talking. And as long as you've spent some time learning some words and some phrases, then and you've got it down muscle memory, then you can just quickly call out these different phrases that you've learned, and it's just as fluent as talking. So when you're working out those things and you're building your vocabulary, that's you. That's going to be your voice. That's your vocabulary that you have to work with. So if there are some phrases that you like, you'll probably end up just playing them a lot. Because and so just the wider of a vocabulary that you have, the more options you have. But I mean, a lot of people can get by and make entire careers out of the pentatonic scale, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually what I was just doing there. That's pentatonic.
Right. So the guy creates. He brings up a good point. He's like, licks are almost like words. The way that you learn words is from listening. I think licks are almost like phrases or even sentences. Absolutely.
I've been trying to kind of figure out. Been trying to refine my analogy for that, but that's pretty much it. Like, I think scales are like the letters, or the notes are the letters, and then like chords are like the words, and then like I don't. But basically, like playing a sequence. Right, exactly. A solo is a paragraph, or like a section of a song is a paragraph, and then the whole song is the big picture of the story. But like, right, but like little phrases, like I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna go. Like, we don't say I am going to go to the store. We say I'm gonna go to the, and that's just something that we don't even have to think about the words. It's just like a do-do-do.
Right.
I'm gonna go to the.
Is that what that lick is called?
I'm gonna go to the store. I'm loving it. Gonna get a Big Mac.
The I'm Gonna Lick by Robbie Benson.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I call them too, is memes. Like a lick is like a meme. Rather, I literally do use "ye" as a meme a lot, and reference that. In fact, I think I've done that more times than I should have while playing Green Hill Zone. Like. Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually just work out little phrases, little licks. I steal all kinds of ideas from memes and things that people are going to recognize, like even non-musicians are going to recognize, and that builds a connection. That's something that I really admire about Clifford Coulter, one of my idols, keyboard players. He had a way of, he was just so musical and masterful with things that he would play, but he also, and he's revered and respected by all these musicians, but he also still had a bunch of people come in to just see him play. They don't even have to know what he's playing, but they just appreciate what he's doing. And he's able to connect with a lot of folks by just referencing a Flintstones melody in one little part of his solo or something like that. It's just really effective and fun, and there's a lot of personality in that. So that's a big thing I've taken from his playing, and trying to relate that to the internet culture.
we got another good question here by Metal Melee Master. He says, aside from practicing at least a little every day, what are some other good habits for aspiring musicians to build up their endurance and stamina and skills? And I like how he starts that. He starts his question with the answer to his question. He's like, aside from practicing every day, which is very clearly
that's essentially
answer.
it.
Like,
truthfully, that's exactly it though. Practicing, but also practicing to do what you want to be doing. In other words, I'm bad. I don't practice that much, but that's partly why I've been trying to do more streams, is that it's going to kind of force me to just get to the keyboard at least a couple hours every couple days and get some time. I think the best shape I was in as a musician was 3 years ago when the band was playing. We were doing streams regularly, like twice a week, and those streams went on for 3 or 4 hours, and then we also had gigs during the weekend, and like there was just a lot of performance going on, and you know, so if you want to be good at playing for a long time, or if you want to feel comfortable playing and building up your endurance and skills, you just got to immerse yourself in it and play a lot. But
I mean, specifically for endurance, I think that like the answer really is just playing a lot. But there is something to be said for just active listening and listening to the music that you like. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. I think that's a huge part of. Yeah, that's essentially what I was going to get to, is that knowing what your goal is. Like, if you want to be really, really good at playing this one song, then just practice that one song, and that's great. Like, that's what I think is a pretty realistic goal for a lot of people. You can get really comfortable with one song, and that's going to do you a lot better than spending that same amount of time on a bunch of different little things and then just being less experienced and less comfortable doing a lot of different things. So trying to focus your practice time on really what it is you want to be good at playing. And so what can help you with focusing that is, like, if you want to be really fluent with playing, with soloing over Green Hill Zone, you can practice to that. And then, aside from just practicing, listening actively to a lot of other music and getting lots of ideas, building your vocabulary with other ideas that other people have done. There might be this thought of like you're not allowed to copy, or that you want to try to do something that no one else has done before. That's just impossible. We learn from experience, and I mean, we might arrive at some things that we didn't expect, and those can be happy accidents. But your vocabulary that you're going to draw from is going to be, at least for me, it's going to be a mosaic or a big mixture of all the ideas and vocabulary that you've listened to and that you've worked out and transcribed throughout your life, basically.
That's a really good way of putting that. It's a big mosaic, and it's made up of a bunch of little pieces. Right,
no mosaic is the same. So in other words, you will be unique just by virtue of you having your own unique ingredients, all the different music that you've experienced. So just listening actively to music and trying to work out little parts of songs. That's a great thing to add to your vocabulary.
So Galva Bart asks, what are some basic exercises that you still perform despite being a pro? Are they scales, chords, chord progressions, rhythm?
That's a really good question, and I should be asking that too, because I don't really do a lot of exercises on their own. Well, you know what? A lot of what I try to do is just geared towards what do I want to be able to play. And so sometimes I'll try to do certain techniques because I'll do things like doing little circle of fifth movements with chord inversions. One thing I do often is, for me, what I'm trying to do is improvise and compose music, and oftentimes I'm doing chords, and so I like to try to just quickly thrust myself to play a totally different chord and just see what that sounds like. Like, kind of jogging your memory of all the chord voicings that you know, and try to play them in different configurations, because then you might end up finding out, oh, that sounds like a good little chunk of a tune, and then you develop that, and that's composing live. So trying to play certain things that kind of put you out of your comfort zone is a good thing, and that's an example of that, like playing chords that are not from a particular song, but you're just kind of making a mosaic of chords and seeing what that sounds like. And then that's helping ingrain your familiarity with these chord voicings, because then if you're reading someone else's chart, or if you're if you're playing someone else's music, they might have a little slice in their song that is similar to that chord voicing that you played, and so in other words, you want to be familiar with as many different chord voicings as possible and have them in your instant recollection, so that way you can have them at the ready for any context, whether you're reading a chart or whatever else. Going back to a melodic idea, like if you're playing melodically and soloing, I think really getting used to playing pentatonics, that's like a good starting point if you want to improvise. And so maybe practicing to a song that has some chord changes in it, and whenever that chord change happens, you adapt to the pentatonic scale that would match with that. So if we're playing an F major chord for Sonic the Hedgehog, the F pentatonic scale is F, G, A, C, and D, which I think that's the theme song, the little jingle that plays when Patty Mayonnaise shows up.
That's such a good deep cut of knowledge right there.
Deep cuts.
Of course, at some point during this lesson, we have to mention Patty Mayonnaise.
Yes. But so, like at that very instant of that song, F major is the chord. So you could be playing your F major pentatonic scale, and that's what I was using for that little lick there. Then when you get to this E minor, now you have your E minor pentatonic scale that would match up with that. That would correlate with the E minor chord. And there's some overlap between those two scales. notes are common between those two scales. So you'll be able to, just as trying to play along to a song and get used to just switching to those chords, also try playing the pentatonic scales that correlate with those chords. And you can also... Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, to kind of summarize that, you're saying, obviously listen to music, pull out, chords or licks that you like, and kind of, put them in the shed and just start grinding them out to make them part of your vocabulary. And a good place to start, you said, is the pentatonics.
I think so. They're very useful. I use them all the time, and that's a good starting point. And then from there, you can start to explore other notes that are outside of those and get into more exotic scales. Another thing that we talked about during one of our lessons earlier was a couple weeks ago, talking about buckets. And so that's really what this was that we were doing, was a bucket.
And to explain that to people, Robbie said that, your solo... can contain basically a bucket of notes that you're just sort of pulling from. And in this case, your bucket could be very small, it could be wide and large, but for this, it would be the pentatonic scale, which is just those 5 notes and kind of stringing together phrases by pulling out notes of your bucket. And one thing that I liked that you sort of explained to me was your bucket could be as small as 1 or 2 notes, and you should still, just with rhythmic, interesting ideas, you can still take that and turn that into a solo, just kind of like.
Yep.
Like just try and make things interesting, even if your bucket is very small.
Absolutely.
Robbie, we have a couple more really good questions here. Oh yeah, see, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I heard the Pac-Man theme in there.
There it is. I just added a third note in there.
We got a couple really good questions here. The one that we're going to get out of the way right now is by John. He says, have you ever meant to play a nice lick on your piano, but you accidentally licked your piano instead?
You know what? No, but I've sweated on my piano. Okay. And then that's when I slide right into the right note. So my sweat helped play the lick.
It just... All right, so we got another really good one here by 8-Bit Music Theory, who has
here we go.
Us on the
is
stream.
That 8-Bit Big Ben? 8-Bit Big Ben?
Big Ben.
There he is, 8-Bit Big Ben.
He says, what do you think about or focus on when you're comping for a soloist?
I'm listening. Well, that's a really good question. You want to listen for... First off, listening. That's the biggest thing. Just listening.
You know what? Kind of as part of that question, Kevin asks right before, what methods do you use to communicate with other musicians in a jam session? Okay,
good stuff. Okay, so when you're playing in an ensemble, like a jazz ensemble, where there's some improvisation going on, I'll go to Kevin's question first here. So basically, there's certain hand signals and things that you might do. So a song, when you're playing the melody or the lead of a song, that's what we refer to as the head. And if we're playing the top, if we're going to the top of the chart, we'll say the top or the head, the beginning of the head. So by just doing this, that means we're going up to the top of the tune. And that way everyone is on one accord and they know where they're at, because there might be times where someone might think we're here in the song and someone else thinks we're here in the song. But to get everyone, if that happens, to avoid a train wreck or falling off Rainbow Road, then you land. You do we're going to the head. We're going to the head, and so that's a good way to just let everyone know what's going on. And then for me, I do this, which means let's move on to the next section, because there are some times in a tune where you might have an open-ended section. There's not a predefined length. of how long we're going to vamp on this chord or this section, but this would be, we're moving on to the next thing. And if you don't want to be so deliberate with it, or be so visually obvious, just looking and listening to each other, and whoever is soloing or whoever is the person that everyone has decided they're going to be directing the tune, you just watch that person, and if they just look at you and say, then that means, okay, now we're moving on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. Then this is a pretty universal end the song, like fist. This means we're going to end it. So, and that's a really useful one.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll never stop.
Then you'd end up in the
song. Oh no! We're calling it.
No, I can't see you. I can't see. I can't see you.
Robbie! Stop!
That's a great. I think we could have the best jam sessions during this quarantine. We just have the best DAC sessions. DAC has a very special arrangement of DuckTales called DAC-Tales, and it's quite. I think you need to copyright that arrangement and get it in the chamber of the Library of Congress.
Yes,
Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. So that's
how to comp.
So let's talk about comping. What do you think about? What do you focus on?
So the main thing is listening, and music is always a balance of things. It's a lot of different things all happening together, and if it's an improvised piece of music, you've got however many people are playing, all of them are moving parts, and so you really want to be listening attentively to what's going on so that you can not overplay and not underplay either. So this is something we were kind of talking about, Dak, is how dynamics are a huge part of music. I relate music to conversation and talking and telling a story, but I also think especially talking is what music is doing. It's a conversation, and when you're talking with someone, if someone's talking kind of softly, or the rhythm is kind of slow and there's some pauses, then you don't want to be playing a bunch of chords and overplaying over that. So I think being very sensitive to the dynamics and the tone of what the soloist is doing, that's a big part of it. And I think playing with other soloists, playing with the same people, that's a good way of just getting to know what their musical voice is like, what their personality is like, and how they tend to build a solo so that you can support them more. But if you were to show up at Jam Clinic and you're playing along with somebody, I think a big part of it for me is just balance, keeping a balance, and trying to not overplay or underplay. So if I'm playing with a bunch of people with less, if I'm playing with a lot of people, if it's 30 people doing a hallway jam at MagFest, well, I'm just having fun and I'll just be playing. But if it was an actual performance with 30 people, I probably wouldn't play a whole lot. I would if everyone else is playing a lot, I wouldn't be playing as much. So I think on a very surface level, that's an important thing, just maintaining a balance. That's a good question.
Well, so okay, can you give us maybe some practical examples, like if we put together like a little chord progression or something?
Yeah.
Like what would it sound like for you comping? Because that's something that I have trouble with if I'm just reading a lead sheet. I might see, we have like A and then D minor, then E minor 7. And I might not really know, like, when am I supposed to, like, play, like,
Right.
How do I do that to make that sound good?
Got it. So let's imagine someone's, I don't know, I'll just try maybe scatting what a soloist might be doing, and then I'll try to comp along with that. So let's say our progression is A minor to D minor to E minor. So if someone's humming or playing some like long notes and it's kind of soft, I'm not a vocalist at all, so this is where I really make a fool of myself. Something like so I'm playing more sparse, and I'm not like going, I'm not overplaying and going really percussive and rhythmic. I might be trying to follow a more legato, a more smooth and light kind of sound. So what I'm doing here is I'm breaking the chords up. I'm arpeggiating them, or I'm fanning them out, kind of like, literally like when you're tapping your fingers like this, you know, brum, brum, brum. That's what's happening on the piano. But that example might be where it sounds like it's more open, like there's not a set tempo, but you would still be counting a tempo, whatever that tempo may be for the song. I'm thinking.
Are you making that noise with your mouth?
Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, I'm trying, and I'm messing
like
up. Yeah,
perfect metronome. I like that.
But I'm thinking of like when we played Neo Kobe City, one night in Neo Kobe City, and Alex is soloing on the sax. It starts off very, very, very soft. It's like, you know. So our tempo here. Let's get the. Here we go. So. So it's kind of like open at first, C chord and D. Okay, and then after that, then he starts to build, and it becomes a little more shorter notes, a little more percussive, and so then we're now grooving, going like. So, again, what the soloist is doing, if they're starting to build in energy, that is like their dynamics are they're going up, they're getting louder. Maybe the notes are becoming shorter and less legato, but more staccato. Even that's when you might want to get more staccato with your playing and more funky, more syncopated. At least in the case of that tune. Also. Hitting high notes versus low notes. Generally, when you get to higher notes, that's a just our ears are perked up. We can feel that energy, that vibration it's much higher, much stronger. So usually, when a soloist is going higher in the register, that could mean, hey, we're going somewhere. We got to support that. We're not going to just be going like really soft while someone's going. Like if the soloist is going ham, we got to go ham with them and support it. That's not the time to play the pretty aquatic ambiance stuff.
I noticed that in a lot of jazz music, you kind of get these like really short stabs, like of chords whenever people are comping, and they're usually really rhythmically interesting, and it almost feels like whoever's comping for the soloist is almost predicting the spots of white space where they need to insert just a little bit of like, a quick chord just to kind of remind you where you are in the song. So is that something that you think about?
So when you're soloing, usually the group already has an idea of like when that solo is going to happen and what chords are happening underneath the solo. So everyone should already be familiar with what the chord progression is.
Well, I meant more as like a listener. Like a listener might be hearing like those little stabs of chords to kind of convey the progression a little bit.
Sure.
As the person comping, like how do you know kind of when to put those little chords in?
Yeah.
And we actually have another pretty good question here that kind of ties into that.
Sure.
Kevin says, what differentiates an excellent chord choice from a good and a great chord choice, particularly during improvisation? And let's even just say like, during comping, because, like with Sonic, for example, you have this F major chord and then that E minor 7 chord. But like, would I want to play all 4 of those notes stacked in thirds like that?
Got it. I would usually... I tend to not play chords in root position unless if I'm embellishing them to be more than a 7th chord. So I think tying that in with what the soloist is doing, the soloist is, if they're playing one note, or if it's a chordal instrument, like if a guitarist is playing some chords, you want to be conscious of where they are in the entire range of their instrument. If they're playing some high notes up here, then you've got this space down here to comp, and that way you're not occupying the same area that they are. Because if I'm playing the same notes, or if I'm occupying the same space of the range that the soloist is doing, then it's kind of, I'm stepping on their area, and it's too much. It might not sound that cohesive. We want to, again, balance. It's a matter of like, if someone's up here, you want to fill in that space. You want to always match the energy of what they're playing. But in terms of where the range is, that's where you're balancing. You want to play lower chord voicings if they're up there. Or if they're playing lower stuff, try playing a little higher. When I play with Brian, that's always an interesting thing, trying to figure out how we can both comp and not be in each other's way. Usually, I treat it, and this isn't quite answering what you just asked, but I'll get to that in a sec. But trying to, if you have 2 comping instruments at once, one might be a little more percussive, and then the other could be more legato or more patty. So in other words, if someone's playing some... So then what Brian could do underneath that is just some open strums that they're going to like cover some harmonic territory, but it's not like 2 things jumping on the bed. It's one person jumping on the bed and the other one's just like holding the bed from falling over.
Falling apart. I like that. Okay.
But as far as like chord voicings, If the chord that's happening in the tune, like if we have F major, we're doing a... So I usually embellish chords to involve a 7th interval. So what that looks like is, here's a 7th interval, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we've got some more harmonic stuff. And then if I want to get really crazy, I might add the 9 in there. So now we've got a lot of interesting notes that we can use to to embellish the F major chord. Now, if I'm voicing that, usually I don't play the root note in the voicing. So I would say if the bassist is doing their job, and this is my job usually, and so I'm already conscious that I'm doing it, but
Right.
if the bassist is hitting the root note, then you don't need to. And that frees up some fingers to play everything but the root note. So if someone's playing Green Hill Zone, bassist is hitting F here, and I'm hitting the upper, I'm hitting the 3rd, the 5, the 7, and the 9. If I want to get really crazy, you do the sharp 11. I guess what might be the best way to answer this is there's no one chord voicing that's going to be perfect for everything. But I could show you some that I often use, and
Sure.
and then you could try them out. So here's some voicings I use a lot. If I'm playing an F major,
Right.
I'm doing an A, C, E, and a G. This is essentially the 3rd, the 5, the 7, and the 9 of the chord. And so what I end up doing here is I'm playing it's essentially an A minor 7 chord. And now this sounds kind of cool because all the notes are thirds. It's kind of open sounding. Not that open, but it sounds nice and solid. I could also invert it. So I'm still playing the same 4 notes, but I'm going to bring them up here. It's a little more crunchy because you've got 2 notes clustered together here. When we move to the E minor chord, I would then make that a 9. And what I end up with is a G major 7 on top and an E on the bottom there. And so, likewise, I might play this in its root position, but then I might invert it. Same 4 notes, but... Now this is a especially cool kind of voicing because it's really crunchy. You got this half step in between. And it's just got a lot more punch. That's the same chord that's used in Isn't She Lovely? Like... So it's got a cool little... That's just a very effective voicing that I would use. So I like to embellish chords to include their 7s and their 9s. And then what that ends up doing is I end up playing 4 notes that are different from the root note of the chord, and then I usually invert those either so that they're in root position or so that they're like third inversion or second. Second inversion or third position. Yeah. I don't do so much.
Dom Polombicus in chat.
Dom Polombicus! And then, you know what? Third inversion's pretty cool too. Yeah, that's a cool way of playing it too. I think learning getting familiar with just playing your major and minor triads and then adding 7s and 9s to those, that's kind of like the stacking of the cake that I would recommend if you're trying to work out your chord vocabulary.
So I like some of the answers that you had there. To go back, I think a big part of comping and what you're focusing on is just listening to your fellow bandmates and what their energy is, and trying to match that and trying to fill those gaps that they are not currently filling. And I like the example where you and Brian Shu are trying to both comp, and one of you are kind of like doing like these, stabs, and like the other person is kind of like doing this legato thing.
Yeah, that's one example of a balance. Another thing is, I could still be doing some stabby stuff, and he could be doing some chanky stuff, like more funky percussive stuff.
Right.
But he's not strumming the notes to be so. They're not resonating so long. Whereas I might be doing more stabby things that are. You can hear the tones a little more. Right. And also, like, he could be doing very active stuff higher up, and then I could be doing more active stuff lower down. But those are a few different examples of keeping a balance, so that we're not both doing exactly the same thing in the same spot.
And then to sort of get back to Kevin's question, like how you're choosing chords, I really like how you're basically saying, if the bassist is doing his job, you don't need to play the root. So, I'm playing what is effectively, an A minor 7 here, but I'm playing it over that F.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think that's really interesting, because then you, as the person who's comping, you're really adding those flavors with the 7 and the 9, but you have that bassist who's holding down that tonic, and that's something that I usually don't do. So, like, if I was going to see, an F major 7 chord, I'm usually playing that F, but now I'm going to start thinking, well, hey, why don't I, sacrifice the 1, throw in the 9, because I know that somebody has already got that note covered. That's
absolutely right. It's also, but it's important to hear that root note. So, like, if it's just you practicing, then, for me, my ear really yearns to hear that root note, so that's why I play it. But so, like, there you go. There it is.
That's literally, by the way, on my synth, I have a setting that's just called Robbie, and it's just. It's just.
That's it. Wow. That's the chemical plant.
Yep.
Gwobs.
Yep, that's just Gwobs.
Yeah, that's a really good question of just like how to comp for a soloist. There's a lot of different things you can do, but the bottom line is just listening and making sure you're doing something that's filling in the space appropriately. And what that means is really following the feel of what they're playing, and not you want to match their energy. Just like when you're talking to somebody, at least the way when I talk to someone, if they're getting excited and they're starting to laugh, I'm probably going to be laughing too, and I'm like, I'm actually. No. I'm there with them, like, and so it's just a conversation in music. If you're not listening to the other person, then you're in your own world, and it's not going to sound that great. You'll be off somewhere else.
Do you have any tips for a musician who's maybe just getting started with jamming on how to listen? And also, this question could be pointed at Kev in the chat, who has run Jam Clinic for a number of years, and this is kind of his specialty.
That's right. Speaking of which, maybe we could do a little, just a mention of what that is. So, MagFest has and MagWest, they've got these jam space / jam clinic areas where people are encouraged to just get up on the instruments and play together, and then they have a lot of curated workshops and different presentations where people learn how to jam together. And so Plasma Fire 3000 in the chat, he's very, very involved in that. I think, so the original question was people just getting started to jam, or getting involved.
Yeah, like, let's say that I'm just used to, grinding and shedding on my own.
Yeah.
And then, suddenly I'm thrown into this environment where there are all these other musicians, and I'm not particularly used to hearing and listening to somebody else. I'm really only focused on what I'm doing. What's kind of a good way to, like, kickstart that listening process? I know that that's sort of weird, but, like, how would you do that?
Yeah. Well, one step, and this isn't something that, actually, this does kind of help, I think. One step, if you are going to play with other people, you got to have really good time. You have to have a good sense of being able to play in time with other people. So, download the Drum Jajingus app and play along to drum loops. Like, that's a big part of it. Drum Jajingus.
Which is Drum Genius.
Drum Genius, yeah. I just call it Jajingus.
Gwobs speak.
Completely illiterate sometimes. I'll just make up words, but Drum Genius, that's an app you have to pay for, but if you're playing on a keyboard that's got some drum loops on it, stick those on. As long as you got something that's at a steady beat, a steady tempo, you could even just play to a metronome if you want, but I always find that playing to drum loops is a lot more inspiring. Actually, I've just been pulling up loops on YouTube and finding some really interesting ones. Very inspiring to play to. And I think that's really the first step, is get used to playing in time, because you do, by virtue of playing with a metronome, you have to be listening to where that beat is, where those downbeats are, and you have to adapt to that.
That's really good advice, because a lot of times if I'm playing a song, let's say that I have VG lead sheets pulled up and I'm like running through a song, if I don't have a metronome, I don't even notice how many phrases I might flub and then kind of just, skip a beat and like retry it. And,
right.
Especially if I'm like, trying to solo, I might like slow down on a section and think like, okay, what do I really want to play here? And that's not something that you can do in a live environment. And that's something that really tripped me up once I start playing with other people, is it's like, oh gosh, I don't have the freedom and the liberty of changing the time signature on the fly, because,
everyone else we all got to be on the same page. Yeah. No one's going to stop for you. That's absolutely true. And I think that's going to open up a lot of eyes. Like, once you start to play and you play to a structured beat, and you have to keep in time with it, then that's going to really expose anything that you're not able to play in time, or execute certain phrases in time. So I think if you can play to a record, you could even just play to a record. Like, I would just play to songs, and that's how I would learn to play them and groove to them. If you can play to an original recording of a song, or play to a drum track, then you're then in that's a huge first step to being able to play with other people. Hopefully the drummer in the jam is solid enough where that you can latch onto what they're playing. As far as
Kevin,
Kevin, go ahead.
Kevin actually says one of the first things that they teach in Jam Clinic, long before they even start playing, is learning to listen and to watch other musicians. Because talking, with normal voices isn't that easy, so it's better to use body language and be cognizant of what's happening. And you kind of went over this a little bit. Was it in this stream earlier? You were talking about the different symbols.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So exactly. Having some agreed upon signals that helps everyone really stay together. That can make the jam a lot more inspiring, because everyone's not lost, basically. But yeah, here's the top of the head. We're going to the top of the melody. So everyone, if we're going to play the melody at the end of the song after all the solos are done, we're going to go back to the top. And if there are some open sections, we signal to move on to the next section by doing one of these, or just whatever your agreed upon things are. It's good to have that kind of worked out before you count 1, 2, 3, 4. As far as listening to other people outside of just playing in time with them, I think I think there's a lot you can learn from listening to records of live bands.
Okay.
And Stuff is a great example.
Tell us a little bit about Stuff.
Stuff is...
Most people have not heard of Stuff.
Right, yeah. Stuff is a band from New York. They were a bunch of session players that were pretty much the top, most sought-after session musicians that everyone wanted to book for their tours or wanted them to play on their albums. They were just a really good synergy group of musicians, and all of them they were very well recorded. They were on so many records, but they came together and made their own band called Stuff, which was kind of like a super group thing. But those were some records of Stuff that my dad brought me up listening to, and Richard T. being one of the he was the keyboardist and piano player for Stuff. He was a huge inspiration to me as well, and a lot of my piano playing is just, I stole so much stuff from Richard T. I love his playing. But they had a pretty big group. Like, it was all a rhythm section. In other words, there weren't any horns or strings or anything. It was two drummers, a bassist, two guitar players, and then piano or organ or Rhodes, a lot of different keyboard layers in there. But listening to those tracks, a lot of them were played live. And there are some really good live recordings of them as well. You can find Live at Montreux from 1976. I think that's on YouTube, and you can see them in action. And so with so many people playing, you could imagine how they might really overstep each other. And they're very capable of all playing something, but not overplaying and not stepping on the other players. I think a big part of it was they worked out parts. They played a lot together so that they would kind of start to work out certain parts that worked for the song. So I'm starting to realize, I think a very good thing to build a vocabulary of is parts. Like, if you're comping, work out some comping parts that you hear in records. Like a meme of, like that those are the opening chords of Isn't She Lovely. That's a great thing to just work out, because then you could do that over a lot of different music. Say again?
I see that you're doing those in different keys now. So would it be a good idea to practice those in basically all 12 keys?
Not necessarily in all 12 keys, but just working out what I'm getting at is the rhythm of it, the feel of it, the conversationalness of it, I guess, the rhythm of it. Because I was playing different chords in that last example. I started playing the chords of Green Hill Zone, but the same da da ga ga da ba da ga ga ga. That's the similarity.
Gotcha.
That's the feeling, and that's the conversationalness of it.
Are we? I don't.
Oh, looks like okay. We're back. Yep, there we go. Boy, it's been quite a day for Twitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think listening to other live bands and trying to hone your ear to hear each individual musician, each instrument, and listen to what parts they're playing individually. Listen to what those parts are. Like, Isn't She Lovely with like, you've got this Rhodes going like ba da 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 da. If we go to Superstition, like You could do that.
And what you're really talking about here is borrowing these rhythms.
Right.
Yeah.
Taking rhythms and because I think that's a huge part of conversation is rhythm. Right. And I think and some of these little rhythms could be something very, very minor, very small, minimal. And it's not just a rhythm, but it's all the accents in it, all the inflection of it, the articulation of it. So like, or you can accent certain beats of it, but taking little riffs and working out accents of those can be really useful because those dynamics make the rhythm. Dynamics and rhythm, I think, are pretty equal in terms of when you're conversing. They're intermingled. So listening to different parts and building up your own vocabulary of parts that other people have played, and then abstracting or taking from that not just the chord voicing that they're playing or not the exact notes they're playing, but the rhythm and the dynamics, the feeling of what it is. And you can apply that to any notes. And now you've got a very interesting vocabulary that's very versatile. You can use it in a lot of different contexts. Right.
Rhythmic phrase, and you're clearly playing these different notes. How are you then choosing those notes that you're playing?
So in that example, I was just playing the notes of I was putting my hand into certain chord voicings and then arpeggiating those chords with that rhythm and inflection, the dynamics.
Right.
In other words, if you can get your hand into a bucket of notes, then you can stir that bucket up with all of your conversational phrases that you've gotten, like all the rhythms and dynamics that you've gotten from.
Right.
That's just like one example. That's one combination. Let's see. I mean, here's another riff that everyone,
Right.
So like, kind of like a Latin kind of groove. And the feel of that, you can apply that to anything. Oh,
nice.
You could even just play the arpeggiate the notes, but again, playing the rhythms of that.
Okay.
I think a lot of musical and musicality, a lot of musical ideas and musicality can come from just thinking on a much simpler level of just rhythm and just the feeling, the dynamics of phrases. Because that's all that we're really thinking about when we converse. We're not even thinking about the rhythm, but that's definitely the main thing of what we're expressing. You can definitely understand kind of how someone feels or what they're trying to communicate just by going. It's like someone's about to vomit or whatever, but like it's rhythms can communicate a lot, and so the less you're thinking about what the notes are. You can still really communicate with music. and you can take those rhythmic ideas and apply them to any chords or scales that you've spent some time getting to know as well.
Sure.
So that's kind of like the muscle memory you want to work out is chord voicings and scales, or just little buckets of notes for your hand to go to. And then once you're in that bucket, then you can pull from any of these rhythmic ideas.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the guy asked, when it comes to arranging VGM, have you ever tried taking a VGM song and putting it into a style of another song?
Absolutely. I think that's pretty much all I do. Yeah. I was going to say that.
Good examples?
Yeah. Usually when I'm playing a song, or when I'm trying to arrange a video game tune, when I listen to it, I usually choose it because it already reminds me of another song. And so I'm not like trying to just cram two disparate ideas together. I've already kind of heard a similarity between this non-video game music song and this video game music song. And so it's kind of like low-hanging fruit. It's like easy to just mash that together. It'll fit. So an example of that would be like, well, Brian, this isn't one that I did, but Brian, when Brian was arranging Aquatic Ruin Zone, he mashed that up, and we basically just gave it a little more of the Latin feel that it has, but then we since it has a section that sounds a lot like Chick Corea's Spain, he put that whole Spain section in the arrangement as well. But then we also just played the whole piece in more of a. I was just pulling from all of my Latin chops, which I don't really have. I was just kind of making a lot of it up, but it already has kind of like a Latin feel to it. So like I'm doing like I'm doing some different little comping isms, little rhythms again that I've heard in Latin music. But yes, in short, I would say a lot of the video game tunes that I rearrange, they're not really being so much rearranged, but they're just kind of being pushed. I push them a little more into the direction that they probably would have sounded like if they had more fidelity, like if it wasn't being on an 8-bit sound chip or a 16-bit sound chip. Right. Again, like a lot of the music that I grew up listening to is probably music that a lot of these game composers heard, and they were kind of referencing certain grooves and feels and ideas that they had gotten from those source songs. And so that I'm just kind of like finishing that circle of making a tune that already sounded like, you know,
right.
that adding like these little kind of angular chord jabs and things. That's what happens in.
What were you just playing right there? I just want to know for me.
Yeah.
What were the actual chords? Let me see.
I'm playing some fourths. Yeah. So you can actually play a lot of fourths that getting used to playing fourth voicings like that. A lot of them are very versatile. They have a very particular sound, and it might not be a flavor that really fits with everything, but you can play a lot of fourths. There's a whole chapter on that in the Mark Levine book,
Dude,
I think. Yeah.
That is amazing. That sounds so good.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I do with
I noticed Yoko Kanno does a lot of fourths too. Yeah.
It definitely. I mean, it's a sound that
Why does that work?
occurs in jazz. Yeah, this is actually a perfect 8-bit music theory, 8-bit Big Ben question. I actually, I personally haven't read that chapter, but I know mathematically, when you play fourths, at least one or two of those notes are going to be related to the chord. Okay, Dak's getting the book out, the Tomegus.
This, by the way, is the Jazz Piano Book by Mark Levine, a.k.a. Robbie Benson's Bible.
That's right. Well, it's one that I haven't read that much, but I know it's everyone's. Everyone that's kind of it's pretty much what everyone says. This is what you got to go through. This is the quickest, and it just covers everything or a lot of stuff.
He has another book called just the Jazz Theory Book, which I was actually reading on a flight yesterday, and it kind of covers a lot of the same sort of stuff. But if you're not necessarily a pianist, I would grab that book.
Yeah, I think that let's see. I'm gonna just find out right now why this works.
Okay, let's do it. Let's find out. This is, you know what? So when does this stream end? By the way, Robbie?
We've got about. I mean, we can go over. However,
okay.
Up until 3 is basically. So we've got about 10 more minutes.
Sure.
I probably won't be going much over just because I've got to take care of a couple things, and I was streaming Super Soul Bros earlier too. But this is definitely some interesting stuff to get into.
Yeah, I like the idea of like let's go deep for this last 10 minutes.
So like these chords are very angular, and there's a lot of opportunity for dissonance to happen if you're playing with other people. It sounds cool on its own, but if you're playing with other people, you got to know which ones of these fourth chord voicings are going to are going to work. So
I mean, one thing that I'm seeing in these fourth chords is it almost seems like no matter what you're playing, you're always going to at least have one note.
Yeah, at least one or two
chord.
notes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one or two notes that is like going to naturally fit with your tonic in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind
of that belong to the. It's very true.
Yeah.
So if we're trying to express a C minor, which is what's happening in Underground. So that's telling us C minor. However, usually when you're playing a minor, if you're improvising on a minor, you might play in a Dorian minor scale, which has a raised 6 there. So now, those notes the Dorian scale, those notes naturally are occurring when you do a fourth starting on the tonic. If you go on the D, that's going to be all of these notes are in the minor scale. This one, it'll sound a little odd if someone's playing that minor there. But these two other notes work. They naturally occur in the scale. Sorry, this is. Let me scooch your thing so that it's not over the camera.
Get me out of here.
I think the bottom line is that as long as the voicing has, as long as the voicing that you're using isn't clashing with what anyone else is playing, then you're golden. That's pretty much it. And so if everyone's playing minor chords, a C minor there, everyone should be playing that. But musicians start to get kind of, the more advanced you get, you can start to just totally diverge from what that chord is. And again, listening, if you're playing along with someone else and it's just you doing the harmonies, you can take the chords and totally go off what the chart says. You can play a different chord, but then it becomes important for you to be listening to, and for the soloist to be listening to you, so that you both can hear when it's going to a major sound or an altered dominant sound or all these other kind of flavors.
Robbie, but I hate to interrupt real quick.
Sure.
I'm picking up the radio from my very unshielded XLR cable right now.
Oh, really?
It's the weirdest thing. I keep hearing your voice and also somebody who's advertising like free pizzas.
Is that Charles E. Entertainment Chuck?
Yeah, that's Chuck E. Cheddar.
Chuck E. Cheese, Chuck E. Cheddars.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah. I would love to hear from 8-Bit Big Ben about like which of these voicings work, but I would say I wouldn't use any of the fourths. I would use specific ones that have at least two of the notes that naturally occur in the C minor Dorian scale. And then if you're adding some notes that are outside of that scale, there's nothing in the rules that say you can't do that, but if you do and you're playing with a bunch of other people, you might be clashing with them. There is a concept of playing out, though, that I was watching this one piano teacher from New York and from NYU saying you can play out and then back in as long as there's just some sort of logic to it, or rather a linearity to it that people's ears can follow. So in other words, you can play wrong notes or notes that are outside of the tonal center of what the song has stated that we're going to be doing, but you could play outside of those as long as you get back in. So you can get this very interesting sound. So the right note is always a half step away. That's another idiom there,
yeah.
Or ism.
And to that point, 8-Bit Music Theory chimes in. I'd say that even the stacks that don't fit in the key at all sound badass as tension builders if you resolve them back into the key.
That's exactly it. Right. So as long as you're not lingering on them, you're fine. You could just then resolve. 8-Bit Big Ben, weren't you doing a stream with Insane in the Rain on Friday, or was it Monday, Sunday? You guys were doing a bunch of video game music analysis. I would love to see the VOD of that if it's already happened. So to that degree, or to that point of playing outside, as long as you end up back inside and resolve it, then you can take the listener anywhere. And I do that all the time. I throw caution to the wind and just play just any notes that have some sort of a logic to them. Like, for instance, I like to do... Whoa, that was weird. I like to do this kind of a riff where I'm just playing some chromatic movement. You could do the same thing with other chord voicings. Or you could do Zelda. Even though we're playing some notes that aren't correct in the C minor scale, they still make sense because we're following a pattern. We're creating an expectation, and even those off notes are sounding fine once we resolve to something else. And then, so that's an example where I'm walking up, playing something, and then I get up to the top here, and now I've arrived at some sort of a bucket of notes. lots of different directions we could go in with this. How about this? Since we did get rather technical there, does anyone have any other questions?
We do have, in fact, a couple more that we didn't get to.
Sure.
All right, so we have a question from Kev who says, did you ever have a fear of listening to yourself or your own recordings, and what takeaways did you gain from doing so over the years? Honestly, I can't imagine you, Robbie Benson, having a fear of listening to your recordings or any video that you've ever shot of yourself.
Sure. No, that's very true. I do. When I listen to my streams now, I'm like, man, I'm just hitting so many off notes. So I do kind of like beat myself up a bit, but I may have misheard the question. Was the main idea?
Did you ever have a fear of listening to yourself or your own recordings?
Not a fear, but sometimes not really. No.
I'll tell you what.
And I would say it's very important to listen to yourself, because that's the only way to really grow.
I definitely have been there where, especially if I'm playing with a bunch of other people, I get wrapped up in my own head and kind of almost anxious about, playing and performing, especially if there's someone recording, because I feel like, oh, this is, permanent. And that's something that, definitely affects me in the way that I play. It's kind of like a form of stage fright a little bit. Do you have any recommendations on kind of how to get over that? Is it just playing a lot?
I think, just playing a lot. I used to get some sort of stage fright from when I was younger, I would say. But just if your goal is to be playing more and be comfortable with playing around other people and in front of people, just do that. Just keep doing it. It at some point you hit that threshold and then you're like, oh, this is just going to be another one. And I'm learning each time, and it's not as big of a deal for you. It will be a big deal if it's the only time you ever perform. But if it's the 100th time or the 10th time or the 20th time, those times are going to feel a lot different than your first time.
All right, we have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
We're going to go through like a little bit of a rapid fire question.
Sure.
Squarica says, I have a question. Even with your guys' skill set, you're always learning new techniques and new things every day. Do you have something that you have yet to master or would want to learn?
For me, left-hand chord voicings, because I don't play left-hand chord voicings that much. I just play bass lines. And I would like to be more fluent with some altered scales, some other really wild scales that I can play over dominant chords to get real outside sounds. I just want to sound like Brian Shu when I want to.
My answer to that is I want to learn Robbie's left hand. That's all. I want to transplant Robbie's left hand onto my arm or grow a third arm.
Mag's plant.
Robbie actually has. Okay. 8-Bit Music Theory asks, what was the worst gig ever? Got any quick stories?
Man.
Worst gig. I can tell you my worst gig.
Sure.
So it was me and Dominic Circetti. We were playing. We got, for whatever reason, we were hired to play this game awards ceremony that was very, very corporate, and it was like so corporate that it was a private event that was hosted by Adam Sessler, who was like this big name in gaming at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember how we got this gig, but we were in this room playing all of these video game tunes for a bunch of people in suits who had never played a video game in their life. They were there from like LG researching like 3D television technology or something.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And it was super weird. And I remember having this like, we had this very visceral moment together where after the awards ceremony, they're doing like this like presentation, and we are kind of in real time watching these like giant suits make terrible decisions for the game industry, and we're like, what do we do? Do we raise our hands and say, this is horrible, don't do this? or do we just get paid for this gig and then leave? And of course, we just got paid for the gig and we left because we were poor and needed the money. But that was like the gig itself went fine, and it was really fun because I was actually mostly playing drums on the keyboard while Dom was playing, and we swapped back and forth and stuff. But it was just so weird to be in the company of all of these insanely rich suited people who just had no idea what they were talking about, like with regards to the community. And that really kind of framed for us things like MagFest, where it's like, truly community driven, and it's like we're so far away from that weird corporate structure.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
no, that sounds like a very a gig with lots of cognitive dissonance.
It was super weird. So we have another question from the guy. He says, favorite chord ever.
Wow. There's no one chord.
Oh, come on! You gotta have just that one spicy chord. 8-Bit Ben, what's your favorite chord ever? I want to know.
I'm a sucker for just like really rich major chords.
I feel like you're a sucker for sus chords too.
It's true. I can't. It's always context. I mean, sometimes I'm in a dissonant mood. Sometimes I'm in a major mood or a suspended mood. But G minor trad in first inversion on top of an A flat trad in first inversion.
Is that? Am I doing this right? No, G. Yeah.
Whoa, that's a nice one. Did I get that? Woo! That's nice.
Oh yeah. Am I doing that right? I think so.
That's the stuff.
Oh. That's good. Kev asks, if you had to pick one rhythm to jam to for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
You know what? I think I'd be into just like that 80 BPM like Stratus kind of groove, or just like a cut time, like a like I could just play along to that all day.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. All right. Let's close this off by getting some music requests. Anybody have a VGM request? Shout it out, and we'll see if old Robbie B can toss it in.
Give it a go. All
right, let's
give it away now.
Let's start it off with some underground themes, since you were already doing that.
Okay, let's do that. And I'm gonna swap. I've been balancing
and then
this keyboard.
I'll hit you with a whatever anybody's writing in the chat, and we'll see if you can get there.
Okay. And I've got the chat here too. I can try to look over.
Cool.
It looks like I'm looking at you, and then you talk, and I'll say, "All right, I got you, Dak."
All right. hey, Robbie.
Yeah.
Hey, can you hit us with that underground theme?
Oh, my favorite. I got you, Dak. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Jammin' Earl. Imperial Strut.
Woo! Oh, baby.
There we go.
And
Looks
we're
like we're back. All right.
back.
Boy, so now is that the third time, the trifecta of the stream crashes? So many VODs. There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Some reharms. All right. Well, folks, I actually I was gonna go.
Robbie played the illegal chord. How do you know about the illegal chord, Kevin? We told no one about it.
Folks, man, that was really fun. Hopefully everyone was able to get something out of that. I know we kind of went through across the gamut of like basic concepts and more advanced ones, but music really is just conversation. It tells a story, and I think anyone can play music, especially if you're not hung up on learning notes and scales. Don't let that stop you. Just you could play something musical just by going, right? Just knocking on a door. That a rhythm. That's a musical idea. So I think approaching instruments and music with that kind of sense of fun and just exploring it. Try notes. Throw your hand on some spot. Oh, that sounds interesting. Okay, what am I doing there? I'm playing this note and that one there, and this white key next to this black key, and over time you can explore and build your own understanding of music. And as long as you're just having fun with it, and you can make musical ideas just by playing rhythms and playing with dynamics, and then you can get more advanced with it as you learn chords and different scales and learn little phrases. There it is. I want to say big thanks to Dak as well for just chilling here and really keeping me on point, because I can go off on many tangents.
This is your wrap-up music.
Wrap-up music. The hook is coming. But yeah, again, shout out to Dak of MagFest for helping moderate and do the Dak Pack Smackdown chat attack. And now he's getting into the Dak Tales. Sick reharm, bro. if anyone's interested in finding out more about just video game music, I know 8-Bit Big Ben, who's in the chat, he's got a great YouTube channel, and he's been doing some streams as well, analyzing video game music. Also, consider going to MagFest. I think MagFest, you got dates now announced.
I think
what are the dates for Super Mag?
Oh gosh, I should know this. I think it's January 21st. Just go to super.magfest.org.
There you go, super.magfest.org.
Let's find out real quick.
And that'll be a big bang, a big bash of a lot of video game music acts, and then the jam clinics and all that other like the more workshop things. All kinds of stuff is going on there.
It is January 21st through the 24th of 2021.
Perfect. I got to get that on my calendar too. And then shout-outs to Fangamer as well for having us. This was really fun. If you're just now joining this stream today for the first time and you've never even seen the Fangamer stream, they do a variety of different streams. They do some office cam stuff. They play games, but they also are doing this weekly Thursday artist spotlight kind of stream, which is what this was today. And we were talking a little bit about my musical process with arranging video game music, and I'm not sure what they've got planned in the coming weeks, but they have all kinds of different artists being featured. Graphic artists. I think last week they had Mike Choi talk about how he designed the flip grip, which is the vertically oriented hand thing, the holding harness for a Switch. I still have to watch that VOD too. It sounded really interesting. I was busy at the moment there. So, give Fangamer a follow if you haven't already. And you'll know that on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, you can tune in to Fangamer for more of these artist streams. And I think they might be having us again to do more of this video game music stream, possibly in the coming month or so here. So they'll be announcing all that stuff soon. Aside from that, Super Soul Bros, you can follow Super Soul Bros on Twitch, twitch.tv/Super Soul Bros. We've got all of our social media there on the screen as well. And then myself as a solo artist, my name's Robbie Benson. I go by Gwobs. And you can also find me on twitch.tv/Gwobs or at me on Gwobs on all the social medias. This is so good. I never get to have background music, Dak. This is great. This is you got to get a green screen so that you can just be like a mini Dak just sitting on the edge of the keyboard playing on another keyboard. I think I might play some Chrono Trigger later on today on Twitch. So if that's happening, you could give Gwobs a follow and we'll have some fun over there. I'm doing the Chrono Trigger streams for this time here.
That's good.
Yeah. It's all right. Well, unless if there's any other questions or anything, I think we're there. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Dak. Thank you, Fangamer. Super Soul Bros and Gwobs and wow, we make a great duet here. Dueling pianos. It's in total Dak fashion as well, with bits of latency. It's great. We could totally show how to jam out with 800 milliseconds latency. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Yeah,
we'll see you at MagFest, hopefully.
All right.
Thank you again, Dak. That was really fun, and thank you for. Boy, what a fun time.
Thanks for having me. More cereal next time, though.
More cereal. That's right. We got to get more cereal involved.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, take care, folks. Later.